It began on a Thursday evening. I had just returned from a week-long business trip to Miami, expecting the familiar calm of home. The moment I stepped inside, the tension hit me instantly. My wife, eyes narrowed, arms crossed, voice sharp, snapped, "Stop interrogating me." I'd heard that line before, weeks of subtle digs, questions that felt like traps, each word loaded with suspicion. Normally, I would have argued, tried to explain, maybe even react offensively. But something inside me shifted this time. I just nodded and said, "You're right," and let it drop. For a moment, the room seemed suspended in stillness. Silence stretched like a curtain. She blinked, caught off guard, expecting me to push back, demand an explanation, trigger the familiar confrontation. But I didn't. I simply let her storm past me into the bedroom, muttering under her breath. There was no fight, no emotional explosion, just calm, a calm so foreign, so unlike my usual responses, it made her hesitate. In the days that followed, I stopped asking questions, stopped passing judgment. I went about my life, working, returning calls, running errands, with the same composure I always claimed but seldom displayed during tension. Gradually, I noticed a change. The tightness in her eyes softened when I entered the room. The clipped, defensive tone of her voice eased, occasionally punctuated by a tentative smile. But it wasn't just the calm that threw her. It was the absence of reaction, the quiet patience, the refusal to feed the chaos she expected. That's when things started to unravel. Though I didn't realize it at first. By the weekend, I was back in Miami for a conference, leaving her at home. I anticipated tension upon my return, but the texts and calls I received were unusual, urgent, almost frantic. "We need to talk," she wrote. "I don't understand why you're so distant." Normally, I would have tried to explain, justify, or soothe her fears. This time, I stayed silent, not out of cruelty, but because silence had become my answer, a refusal to engage in the storm she created. Back in Miami, I immersed myself in the city, the sunlight, the bustling streets, the energy around me, yet her words lingered, echoing in the quiet of my hotel room. She expected me to call, to chase, to plead for reconciliation or explanation. I didn't. I let her messages sit unanswered and carried on with my life. Then came the call that shifted everything. She was incredulous, nearly shouting over the phone, "How can you just ignore me? Don't you care?" For the first time, I answered calmly, saying exactly what needed to be said. "I care enough to know when a conversation won't lead anywhere. I'm letting this go until you're ready to speak without anger." Silence followed, a heavy, uncomfortable pause. I could hear her breathing, and in that moment, I realized she wasn't prepared for this response. She had expected me to match her intensity, to feed her drama. Instead, I held up a mirror she wasn't ready to face. And mirrors, as everyone knows, reveal truths we'd rather avoid. By the time I hung up, I understood that the dynamic had shifted. The balance of power, subtle and nearly imperceptible, had moved. She had lost her footing, not because I raised my voice, but because I didn't. When I returned home from Miami, the difference was undeniable. She paced the living room, tension radiating from every movement, while I watched quietly. There was no confrontation, no accusation, no desperate plea for explanation. She had anticipated chaos and fireworks, but found calm instead. A calm so absolute it unsettled her completely. That evening, she finally spoke cautiously, testing the waters. I don't understand why you didn't fight back," she murmured. I looked at her steadily, letting my gaze carry the weight words couldn't. "Because fighting doesn't solve anything," I said. "I respect myself too much to participate in needless conflict. If we are to rebuild, it must begin with honesty and composure, not drama." Her expression softened, a flicker of realization passing over her face. She had believed tension and arguments were the only way to connect, to prove love, to command attention. I showed her something different. That patience, controlled distance, and quiet respect could hold far more power. In the days that followed, she cautiously tried to adjust her approach. But the truth was clear. The dynamic between us had changed permanently. The stakes were reset, the rules rewritten, and the lesson delivered without a single raised voice. She lost control, not because I forced it, but because I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. And in that quiet victory, I discovered a clarity I hadn't known I needed. Strength doesn't always show in shouting, chasing, or demanding attention. Sometimes it's revealed in the deliberate act of stepping back, allowing the storm to rage while you remain unmoved. And in that stillness, everything changes.